All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to the homecoming edition of the Titan Talks webinar series. I'm Sarah Vore and I am so glad that you all are joining us tonight for this webinar as part of our first ever virtual homecoming. This webinar is sponsored by the Young Alumni Council, which was reestablished this year in January to strengthen the bond between alumni of the last decade, current students, and their relationship with Illinois Wesleyan. Young Alumni Council members are champions for IWU and its brand. They promote events, provide a network for young alumni, and assist in the transition from student to alumni by providing engagement opportunities and connections. Now for just a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted, however, you are welcome to participate through the chat box. We will be answering questions throughout tonight's presentation, but if there's time at the end, we may be able to answer some additional questions. Also, in case you have to leave early or if you would like to share this webinar later, it will be recorded and posted later for future viewing. Now I'll hand it over to Bevan to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Good evening. As Sarah said, my name is Bevan Chobin. I'm a Wesleyan alum from the class of 2010, and I am the coordinator at the Illinois Wesleyan Action Research Center. Prior to working at Wesleyan, I worked for Mark First, a small nonprofit here in Normal, Illinois, supporting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So tonight's topic is very close to my heart. Now I'll introduce our panelists briefly. Their full and very impressive bios are in the Facebook event, and I will link that in the chat once we get started, but I'll give you a brief overview here. First, we have Dan Wisher. Dan is an investor relations associate at Antares Capital, and outside of work, Dan volunteers his time as the founder and president of the Chicago-based nonprofit organization, the Andrew Wisher Foundation, also known as Wish Forever. The organization was founded in memory of Dan's older brother, Andrew Wisher, who was also a Wesleyan student. He's also the producer of its annual music festival, Wish Fest. Next, we have Angela Mehalek, the executive director of the Andrew Wisher Foundation, who's graciously joining us this evening on very short notice on behalf of Ted Delicap, class of 2013, who couldn't join us this evening. Next, we have Lauren Rock from the class of 2013. She's the Director of Individual Engagement and Staff Lead for Young Professional Engagement Efforts at the United Way of Greater Atlanta. And last but not least, we have Kate Tombaugh, the class of 2007. Kate is a mezzo-soprano who's performed and soloed with a number of prestigious orchestras, including the New Philharmonic, the Northwest Indiana Symphony Orchestra, and the Paducah Symphony Orchestra, in addition to numerous other roles at venues around the world. She's the founder and executive director of the nonprofit arts organization, Poco a Poco, hosting an intensive week-long summer music training program for high school-aged vocalists in Streator, Illinois. Thank you so much, panelists, for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us this evening and share with alumni what you all do. So we'll start with a super basic question. Can you tell us just a bit about yourself, about your nonprofit, and the role that you play in its success? And to prevent awkward pauses, I will just pick whoever is first on my screen. So we will start with Kate.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm really thrilled to be amongst these amazing panelists. So as Bevan mentioned, I've been singing professionally now for just a little bit over a decade, and I love teaching so very much. I love performing, and I've always been seeking a way to mesh those together and to find a way to really find fulfillment in my career. There's a lot about it that I really love, but I've been yearning to give back in a way. And my hometown of Streator is a small town, about 13,000. I grew up outside on a farm and went to a very, very small school that didn't have a band. And in the last few years, I just kept seeing music programs getting cut, especially in central Illinois, north central Illinois, and created this to be able to give back and also be able to create some community pride back in the place that I love the most.
Thank you so much, Kate. Dan, please take it away.
Sure. Thank you again for having us. We're obviously very honored, and it certainly comes full circle here. So we started this organization in honor of my older brother, Andrew Wisher, who was an Illinois Wesleyan student. He was a freshman when he was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Ended up having to drop out of school and start his long battle with cancer. But obviously, some of his closest friends in the community that surrounded us all came from the Illinois Wesleyan community. So what I mean by full circle is that it really started as a result of Andrew's involvement with the Illinois Wesleyan community. So thank you for bringing us. So we started the organization after Andrew passed away in 2012. He would have been a junior at Illinois Wesleyan at the time. And Andrew's stories, not so much about his diagnosis with cancer, not so much about when he passed away, but really what he did in between that time to just ignite so much inspiration in me and my family and all of our friends and the community of thousands of people that surrounded us. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. We had thousands of people come to our doorstep. And, as a 21-year-old guy at the time, Andrew recognized that. And he had one very selfless request, and that was to pay forward the kindness that my family was shown during that 3-year battle with cancer. So we took it to heart and tried to fulfill that one wish. And what we do at the Andrew Wisher Foundation is really simple. We raise as much money as we can, and we give it to families with adolescents or young adults battling cancer. So really powerful mission, a direct mission, and supporting families going through some really difficult times, and all in the name of Andrew Wisher.
And that's probably a good segue to Angela's introduction.
Thanks, Bevan, and thank you for having all of us tonight. As Dan said, we are a part of a wonderful organization called the Andrew Wisher Foundation. We lovingly call Wish Forever, and it is my honor and privilege to be the executive director of the foundation, and I help Dan run the day-to-day operations of the foundation. And I have many different hats that I wear. One of my main focuses is with our beneficiary program. I also help with fundraising. I steward relationships with our executive board, and I help Dan produce Wish Fest and some of the other events that drive our fundraising. So we are a volunteer-led organization, let that be clear. I am the one and only employee. And so Dan and I wear many, many hats that we can talk about, I'm sure, as the night moves along. So thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Angela. And finally, Lauren.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, as everyone has said, for having us, and Bevan for your awesome moderation. Really excited to not only join the community today, but happy homecoming, everybody. Let's get it. Right? So really, I began working with United Way of Greater Atlanta about 4 years ago when I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. But my time with United Way has been for a little over 6 years. Right after college, I became really inspired to support kids through out of school time. After teaching in a early learning center, really having an experience with a young man who didn't really have all of the social supports he needed to feel like people were pouring into him. I was working in a 3rd grade classroom at a time, and was able to connect with him, and he would come to me, every day and just try to find ways for me to help him. And even though I was not his teacher, it really inspired me to say kids need support from a number of different angles. And so I started working with United Way as a way to support students, youth with that out of school time, and really creating meaningful programming that helped to really change their lives. Now, sort of fast forward, I'm helping to support and ignite young people like ourselves to do more for their community. And really what that means to me is helping people pursue their passion, help people pursue their dreams around community change, systemic change, and just greater overall impact for where they call home. So really excited to be able to transform not only lives via the community, but also people, donors, peers. Our mission through United Way, specifically in Atlanta, is to create a community where all people have the opportunity to thrive. And we do that under a phrase we call child well-being, which is really centered around ensuring that children have the resources, the social supports, as well as just the overall structures that support their success. And so really I plug into that to be able to help people better understand what the root causes are around the barriers that children face to succeed. In Atlanta, 1 out of every 10 children will continue to stay in poverty. And so that's horrible. We don't want that. And so it's an opportunity for us to continue to bring kids out of that situation and make sure that they have thriving lives and can pursue education at places like Illinois Wesleyan.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We'll jump into the first question, and I think we are all capable of taking turns, so I won't jump in and direct everybody to talk. So if the question speaks to you, jump in. We'll all take turns. Starting off with, can you tell us the best example of the way you've seen your organization's work make a difference? And this might be for an individual. It might be a little broader for the community.
Happy to keep the order, Kate and Lauren, if that's easiest. So at the Andrew Wisher Foundation, you know, it's what we love about our mission is it's first very simple in that, you know, we're raising dollars and we're literally giving dollars to families, right? That's very simple at its core. But that's what we find we appreciate the most, in that we can very visibly and directly see the impact of all of the hard work and generosity that all of our supporters devote to this cause, and that, you know, we're raising these funds and we're visiting with these families and we're, you know, giving these large financial grants. But even more so, like I said, we're physically welcoming these families into the Wisher River community. And, you know, in terms of our 2 pillars, it's the financial support that we lend, but it's also this kind of welcoming feel where, you know, they know that they have an army of support with them. You know, not all families are all that lucky to have this amazing support at all times, right? And the Andrew Wisher Foundation is a great vehicle to ensure that these families going through some of the most difficult times in their lives are very much supported, both financially, emotionally. Andrew, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Absolutely. Our focus is the adolescent and young adult community, known as AYA, and it is a woefully underserved community in as far as cancer is concerned. We find that so many of our beneficiaries are facing unique challenges like social isolation, depression, hiatus from school, from work, you know, lack of insurance, delay in diagnosis, and fertility preservation, just to name a few of the challenges. And then add on top of that, you know, this cancer diagnosis. And as Dan said, many of them don't have a support team. So we like to ensure that these families are not fighting alone. We are there to support them, not only financially, but emotionally, and you know, in any way that we can, just to bring a bit of joy and make sure that they are not fighting alone. So it's simple but powerful, and it was a niche that we chose because it's underserved and because Andrew found himself in that position. So it made sense to us to serve that community.
Well said.
So I'll talk just a little bit about Poco a Poco. We've been around for 5 years, but it's been an idea that's been formulating for me for a very long time. And I guess in a lot of ways, I've been kind of testing the waters even since I was a teenager. There's a lot of reasons why it works, where it works, because it is a small town, because it is my hometown. I have a little bit of name recognition there, or at least I know somebody that knows somebody that has the answer for me. And it's been really interesting to see, because when I actually first started the nonprofit, I had just married my husband, who's also a musician, and he got a job in Kentucky, which was great. We had a job, but he was moving me away from where I was trying to get to. And so I kind of said, well, if we're moving, I'm going to start my nonprofit in my hometown in the summer in June when I most want to be at the farm. And it's been really kind of amazing to see the transformation of my hometown. I don't take any credit for being a part of that, but I like to think that we've helped create this synergy of a town that has really just gathered so much more pride and energy in the last 5 years. You know, when I was growing up, a lot of people weren't really proud to say where they were from, and that was shocking to me because I could just see the potential and the resources there. And the biggest way that we know that we're making an impact is through the students that return year after year, the parents that are just so grateful for this supplemental experience, the teachers, because we're helping to create stronger programs for them. We're joining the fight in trying to always insist that the arts are so necessary and so important. It's not STEM, it's STEAM. And we're a part of that. But really, when I first started, in all honesty, I had no idea how it was going to turn out. And I didn't even really know what the organization was going to look like. It turned out that a week-long festival, training 30 young artists, grades 8 through 12, hosting free concerts throughout the week, and creating a community choir with participants from 20 communities across North Central Illinois and farther. That's enough to keep me busy during the year because, as Angela mentioned, we are a one-person staff with a great board and lots of volunteers and lots of energy. But I remember telling my staff on the first day, lots of whom were colleagues and friends, and I said, you are here because you're fantastic at what you do. You're good people. I know you're going to be models for these kids because we want to teach them so much more than just music. We want to open their eyes. We want to expose them. But also, in case this burns and crashes in 8 days, I'm hoping you'll still talk to me. And I couldn't believe it actually worked, and didn't know that I would have the energy to continue every summer for the next 5 years because my daughter was actually 10 months on the day that we launched the festival. And now we are expecting our second 2 months before our 5th festival, but it's the energy of the community that keeps inspiring me. And I know, I trust we're making an impact.
That's so touching, Kate. I love it. Like, hearing everyone's stories is just completely moving because you hear the passion that comes out of our community, right? And you hear the opportunities that we see to make the world a better place. And so even though I don't actually support an organization that is my own, I certainly support one that has been a passion of mine for a long time because we look at all root causes of the work in a community. Opportunity, generational wealth, privilege, a number of these things are not something that everyone is afforded. And what I'm grateful for around United Way is the opportunities that I've been given over the last several years to really better understand that, to better understand why there are people who are left behind, why there are people who are going well on a track and then all of a sudden hit a point in their life where things alter and change. And I think, you know, all of us can probably talk about a person that we either know in our lives or that we've met through our organizations who, you know, fit in some of those categories. But you also get to engage with people who are learning, who have opportunity and have that privilege and that wealth, who just want to do better and want to do good for communities. And so really a lot of our impact comes through each of those categories. It comes in the form of young kids who, you know, come to school having slept in a car all night and come to school and are hungry, and the first meal that they get is from their school, and their teacher hands them that extra thing or that extra snack throughout the day, and you know, that's the meal that they get. And after they leave, they may not have anything until the next day that they come back to school. It might be the worker who has had a successful job for all of their life, COVID hits, and then all of a sudden their job is gone. And so what do you do when that person then is evicted or no longer has stable housing or opportunities because they live in Atlanta by themselves or, you know, whatever it looks like. And then really you have that person who, again, experiences a coworker potentially facing a challenge like some of the ones that I described before, but they want to be able to do more, and they want to be able to see that change because they don't want the person who sits in the cubicle next to them failing or feeling like they can't make it or be present each day. And so that's why I come to work every day, and why I think it's so impactful, the work that we do, because we're looking at not only what the situation is that the person is facing and how that is impacting them, but we're also looking at how we get them out of that. United Way, as a global and international organization, focuses on 4 different pillars: education, income, health, and really homelessness and all of those facets. And so through those categories, what we try to do is in each localized community or in each country, really understanding exactly what that community, that city, that town needs, really so that we can do the most for that grouping. And so having lived in Madison, Wisconsin, starting my career with United Way there, and then moving to Atlanta, the needs are very different, but there's a really strong root in what's important and what we need. So I am moved every day by the fact that there are stories and that there are people whose lives get elevated. There are people whose lives completely shift, but I can be there and you can be there as a part of that journey.
I'm so impressed with you all. You do such amazing work. It's really, really excellent to be able to hear not just what you do, but you're all so mission aligned and very passionate about it. It's really, really wonderful. The next question is talking about the most successful program or perhaps initiative or piece of what your organization does. What do you feel like is really the bread and butter of, if somebody asked you, what are you most proud of, what would you hold up specifically that your organization does?
Yeah, Angela, you can go ahead and start, and I'll take it away from there.
Okay, great. So I'd say our beneficiaries, while per se it's not a program, they are our program. They are the reason we exist, the reason we fundraise, the reason we do what we do. Meeting a beneficiary is like no other experience. We always tell our board members that you need to join us on a visit. There's nothing like meeting a family that is in a very, very difficult circumstance, yet they all have a smile on their face. They're all so happy to see us. When we present our grant, we love to do it in person because we're trying to make that human connection. To us, that's the most important part of this. Sure, the financial end of things is great for the families. They so need the money, but it's the connections and the relationships we build with these families that are in financial distress. That's what drives our mission. That's why we exist. And the beneficiaries are an amazing part of our journey. And now the vehicle to get there, of course, is our unique fundraiser that we call WishFest. And I'll flip it to Dan because this was his brainchild, and it has been so successful and grown organically and helped to, like Kate said, we didn't know if we'd exist after our first year. We were just thought, well, we'll raise some money and help some people. And here we are 7 years later, and we couldn't be more grateful for all the support that we've been shown to keep this mission going and to grow organically and to help more families. And there's just so many families out there, like you've all said, that are in such huge need. And to be able to benefit these families it's the most wonderful part and the most challenging part of what we do, right? So it's a combination of emotion that you see when you're with these families. But the vehicle is WishFest, and it's kind of in synergy with Wish Forever. So I'll let Dan tell a little bit more about that part of it.
Yeah, well said. I mean, obviously the core of what we do and why we started this was the family dynamic, right? Make an impact in any way we knew how. And when this started, when Andrew died and had this request, we didn't really know what paying it forward meant, right? We didn't know what we could do, but what we did know is that we wanted to A, honor Andrew, B, we wanted to utilize the support base that we have to make as big of an impact as possible. And back in late 2012 and early 2013, us helping one family was a big deal. So, and when we thought about how do we help a family or a couple families locally, what we really kind of grew to like when Andrew was going through this was just get as many people together and enjoy life, right? And enjoy our time that we had left with Andrew. And, being college age kids that we were, it was a party, right? We got together and we had a party to celebrate life, and that was it. And that's kind of where the idea of WishFest came about. We ended up just wanting to get as many people together to have a good time, and in return of that good time, you're also benefiting a family or two as a result, right? So the idea was very simple, so that idea morphed into, let's have a band out there and let's just have a party. From there, it went to, let's get a really big band, or what we thought was a really big band at the time, and have a bigger party. And, as the momentum continued, more and more people got involved. We were able to bring in more and more people, more and more, more larger and larger talent. So now it's become what WishFest is today, and it's really just a unique event hosting a couple thousand people every year and welcoming national talent in the likes of OAR, Third Eye Blind, Andy Grammer, a couple country music acts like Walker Hayes, Rodney Atkins, Easton Corbin. So some really cool talent has joined us at WishFest, and frankly, what we've really benefited from the event is just that it's not only a cause, right? When we started this, we were like, how do we have something that's sustainable? Our thought was, let's just make sure it's an event that people want to go to regardless of the cause. And what's great is, of the 3,000 people there, 2,000 of them, probably know about the cause, but the other 1,000 people, they may or may not even know why they're there, right? But they get there and they understand and they see it and they want to be a part of the cause going forward. And that's certainly what we've benefited from the most since this all started. But obviously, the end goal being the success of the event itself and the success of the mission in order to help as many families as possible. And thanks to WishFest and thanks to the support of the communities that have rallied around it, we've given out almost $1.5 million to families to date in just around 8 years. And that's a testament to this event, but it's also a testament to the communities that just continue to support us year in and year out as a small volunteer-led organization.
Lauren, would you like to go next?
Sure, happy to. So really, I think from an overall perspective for me, the values of what United Way can do for our community and just the great stories that are told are really centered around kids. I think there's a lot that happens with adults that is really moving and completely has changed my perspective. But in the light of COVID, I'll just share a story that I've been really proud of recently. So one of the things that is really major in Atlanta, and you've also probably seen across the country, is this digital gap and how a lot of kids needed to move into virtual learning or no school at all. And so what does that really look like and what are we thinking of? And I remember coming together with our team at United Way, and they were sharing all these new ideas, and I was so concerned because I was like, I don't know what this means. I don't have kids myself, but I know that it's going to be a barrier. And so one of the things that we came together to figure out was that we needed to be able to provide kids with an experience, a digital experience that was still enriching, expose them to new opportunities. Kate, I really appreciate that you said STEAM and not just STEM. So looking at STEAM as a way to really bring light and fun and innovation to the experiences that kids don't always get to have. But then also thinking about really what that curriculum looked like. And so for a lot of the students in the greater Atlanta area, that was our first response. It was, okay, let's get them the laptops and let's get them the curriculum in a digital platform. But it became a lot more complex than that, because as I started to learn, I realized that for kids who were really excited about going to kindergarten for the first time this year, they weren't going in person. They weren't about to get on the bus. Same way a lot of us saw seniors who were supposed to be graduating have their graduations canceled or big celebrations canceled. And at the same time, I was also thinking, like, senior year of high school, like, it felt like a long time ago, but I remember how much fun it was and how much I really anticipated getting ready to get started to go to Wesleyan, and that first year at Wesleyan, really what that meant for my transition into adulthood. And so it really started to morph into, this is more than just solving for the digital barrier. You're also solving for the social and emotional support that students need. You're solving for the overall connection that kids need. And so you have to sort of think about this in a number of ways. And so I was excited to be able to support an organization that really worked in the STEAM area. They were looking at gaming and how esports could provide opportunities for kids. And so what we did is we partnered with a local organization, My United Way specifically, and we're able to come together to think about how our United Way could help the communities specifically were disproportionately affected by COVID, which were Black and Brown communities, and being able to go in and say, okay, not only are we giving you these laptops, but we're also giving you access to food. We're also giving you access to stipends. And so that was really moving because we were able to look at the initial need of the family, but then keep in touch with them to be able to solve for barriers that they might face down the line. And so I said this before, but looking at the holistic view of making sure that people not only have what they need immediately, but also so that they likely don't have to face that again is what's so core and so important for me and for the work that we do. And so I would say a lot like Dan and Angela, my role in that gets to be a lot of fun because I get to work with young professionals. And like he said, we like to party, we like to have a good time. So every year I get to hold an annual gala. This year, of course, I didn't get to do that, but we usually have it on the rooftop of some space in Atlanta, able to bring together top talent in the city, as well as just having it at historical spaces that people love to hang out at. We get dressed up, and we play fun games, and, we have dancing and of course, drinks and food. And it's a celebration of what young people can do to transform the lives of kids. And a lot of my donors and people that I get to interact with feel like, okay, I can't give $10,000 out the door, but your ticket of $50, $75 that you pay to come to this event, or even your $5 donation if someone gave you a ticket, is coming towards supporting those kids and those families. And so we really want people to know that every little bit counts. Whatever you feel like you can give and contribute to support our mission is enough. Even if you can't give of your money, giving of your talent and your time through volunteer service is just as valuable as well. And so even during this time of COVID, there are virtual opportunities where young professionals are training older adults who typically are mentors for kids to learn how to work Zoom. They're learning and supporting kids and really recording those STEAM videos on YouTube so that kids can use household items to make a volcano. A lot of the things that we all kind of potentially took for granted, but we're able to sort of see that happen and come to life in a virtual sense. And so that's created a little more access for people and a lot more availability, I would say, for companies and partners to be able to see that there's value in them showing up no matter what the experience looks like, right? But to service that need. And as Dan and Angela said so graciously with their work, pay it forward.
So much great stuff. It's just really, I'm learning so much and I'm loving hearing about everything everyone's doing. I especially really liked how Angela talked about growing organically. I think that's kind of the thing. There's this quote from The Secret Garden that I kept thinking about a lot, especially those first formative years. At first, people refuse to believe that a strange new thing can be done. Then they begin to hope it can be done. Then they see it can be done. then it is done and all the world wonders why it was not done centuries ago. I mean, you have to have a little bit of you have to have a lot of passion. And I think that's the hardest thing when you're young, is figuring out how your skill sets can intersect with your passion, but also where it's needed, you know? And I just happen to be really fortunate that the place that I most love to be seems to be needing the things that I can offer it right now. I actually came up with the term, for those who aren't fluent in Italian or Spanish, poco a poco is an Italian term, also Spanish, but in music we use it to say little by little. And I think I came up with it. My mom was just telling me the other day that no, she actually came up with it, but either way, it was a good idea. And it's kind of been my personal mantra since I learned about it taking piano in 5th grade, and then it became my professional mantra, little by little. And it's actually helped me remember to grow organically, because I am just one person. I am in a very specific stage of life right now. And so when a great idea comes with lots of enthusiasm, and I want to say that is a fantastic idea, but poco a poco, let's talk about that in maybe 2 to 5 years, because you still have to have a very strong business model, and you want to be sustainable, and you want to be around for years and years to come. And so right now, I think a lot about how we can create great visibility. And now we know that what we do is quite strong, and we have this model that has worked now for 5 years in COVID and not in COVID, and just gaining that trust with local music educators, with the town, with students, with parents, has been really wonderful, and honestly so very affirming. But I think so right now we're just doing this week-long music festival, which is plenty for me right now. But the coolest part about it to me is that we have students from all different types of backgrounds. We have applications, we have auditions, but there's absolutely, the only thing is being dedicated and showing passion and talent in that arena. And we have all different levels of scholarships and funding, and it's all done completely confidentially with me, privately with the families. So we have these students, some of whom are very likely going to go on into college and become and study music, some of whom might even be professional musicians, and then other students that are homeschooled and have never gotten the chance to sing in a choir. And they're all working together in this completely non-competitive arena for an entire week alongside professionals who I've handpicked that come from all over the states, which is another really reaffirming thing for me, because they're not getting paid a whole bunch, but they love working with the students. They find the students to be super motivated and inspiring to them, and they're singing alongside them, they're teaching them, they're training them. There's all of these kinds of great discussions that happen. And in a very selfish way, I'm able to create kind of my own music utopia, because without getting too far into it, sometimes there's this idea that in order to be successful in music, you have to be cutthroat, and you have to be competitive, or you have to be so streamlined that you can only do one thing. And I think that that is completely false. And we talk a lot about the philosophy of music and how to create good in your life, and how to make sure that you keep music in your lifelong experience. And that part is the neatest thing, is actually so much more unique than I realized when we first started. The ability for students to get to be exposed to all of these new ideas and all of these really fantastic network of people, and be able to hand tailor an experience, because every student's schedule is hand tailored according to their skill sets, their interests, their passions. And during the week, they could learn composition and conducting and movement, and they sing in choir, and they sing in 2 concerts, and it's not at all pigeonholing whatsoever. So that part is, the festival obviously is just a very inspiring time.
I want to go back in time and go to I want to be like a little kid again and go to your camp, Kate. That sounds so great.
The community choir.
I should do it. I really should. I should stretch myself and get back into my music roots.
Great time, and you'd be singing next alongside professionals, so you don't have to feel nervous about not knowing all the notes.
That's great. It would be perfect. You have shared a lot of really fantastic work. What are some of the challenges? What are some big roadblocks that have come up, and what gave you the motivation to keep going through those?
Happy to start, and excited to hear Kate and Lauren's perspective too, being at different size organizations. But for us, when I think about kind of when we started, I mean, the roadblocks were just the idea generation, right? I mean, there's so many organizations, particularly in the community we come from. There's thousands of charities, right? And there's a finite amount of people and a finite amount of dollars that go around, right? And time and resources. So how do you become a charity that, is very much supported? Obviously, the first couple, call it year and a half to 2 years, it's a little easier, in the fact that our namesake passed away, and his memory kind of lived on and carried us, and kind of built the organization off of his name, and people just kind of flocked to Andrew, and that's why it was quote unquote easy for us, and that you put Andrew's name on something and people just kind of come running. But as the years goes on, not that his memory fades by any means, but at the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot of charities and there's a lot of causes that people want to support. So the roadblock is, how do you continue to solicit that support? How do you continue to come up with ideas to get people excited, right? And for us, we were lucky enough to come up with an event, right? An event that people did want to come to every year. And for the event itself, it's you mark the date and you're set. But as we continue to grow, and Kate, I love how you mentioned the word sustainable. That's a big thing for us now. We're at 7.5 years in, and for us, it's as a volunteer-led organization, how do we sustain that growth as we continue outside of just being an event-driven organization, right? Our goal down the road is to be to be raising revenues outside of just WishFest one day, right? So how do we sustainably do that? So for roadblocks, or I don't really like the word roadblock, but perhaps a challenge. A challenge is certainly within our organization. How do we continue to delegate? How do we best use the time and resources of our volunteers and support base to continue to grow? What would you say, Angela?
Agree with all of that, especially as, maybe not for Lauren, working for United Way, it's a well-known name, right? But you have your own challenges unique to you in Atlanta, and specifically what you're doing. So everyone has challenges, no matter if large, small. If you're the American Cancer Society or Wish Forever, you have challenges, right? And Kate, I'm sure you'll speak to your challenges. Being an arts-based organization, there are challenges there as well, unfortunately. Especially in education these days, people don't see the need for the arts, which is the absolute wrong perspective, but that's a different discussion. Anyway, I think there, so many challenges for us as an organization, and to sustain momentum, to rally corporate and grant support. All of that takes so much time, and many corporations want to be affiliated with a large name, for example, and so they don't necessarily want to take the chance on giving large amounts of money to a smaller organization. But it's like, how do you find that way? How do you figure out how to maybe open a door where one wasn't open before? Or with grant writing, it takes a lot of time and energy to find those opportunities, those grant makers that actually fit your needs specifically, and where there's a synergy in their philanthropic focus and your mission. And there could just be one little thing off, and so that grant doesn't come to you. So the challenges are many, but the challenges are also opportunities. I like to think of it as, okay, well, you know, so this challenge is there, but how can we sort of spin in a direction that the challenge becomes an opportunity, like a little puzzle, like, you know, how can we work around this and still get to where we're going? I don't know if that makes sense. Am I making sense? So it's a matter of your perspective, I think, right? We can all be like, oh, this is just too hard. But then the next day you have to wake up and be like, no way, it's not too hard. We're just going to find a different route to get where we're going. So I think that's what we've done. We've, you know, done a lot of work with creating a board of young professionals, like all of you, that are amazing and passionate and dedicated and want to be hands-on. And that has been a huge driving force for us, was creating this ambassador board and actually giving them responsibility. Like, they want that responsibility and we need help. So it's like, what a perfect, you know, union to have these young professionals that want to get out there and drive what we're doing, right, without us even really asking. So for us, our ambassador board itself has been a huge help in, they're the future of our organization, quite frankly. You know, as the executive director and an older person, you know, I'm always going to support this organization because I'm passionate about it and I love what I do. But at some point, we're going to need that younger generation, all of you, taking the reins and pushing the organization forward.
I'm sorry, Bevan, for skipping ahead on some of your questions if I do that without meaning to. A couple of the things I mentioned is just that, you know, when I think back on it, who starts at a nonprofit with basically no background in it whatsoever, having moved to another state, wanting to start it in your home state while very pregnant. And thankfully, I was really ignorant about what that would all entail. And by the time that it happened, there was so many people excited about it that I couldn't really turn back on the idea, which was kind of helpful in a lot of ways. But also it is it's very homegrown. It's very family oriented. My brother, my mom, and my dad are all musicians, and they really fervently believe in this idea. And my husband is a musician. He is one of my teachers, and he helps us expand into areas of music that I don't know a whole lot about, with music theory, music composition, all these sorts of things. It made a difference for our family. And again, it was very affirming. We started out without a board. I think we had a board, of course, because we were incorporated, but it was my husband, my mom, and myself. And then in our second season, about 3 weeks before the festival started, I started forming a board. And at the end of our third season, they decided to start paying me a stipend, and I became the first employee. It's not a lot, but it makes it doable for my family in a lot of ways, because it is a family run type of thing. So starting it while being in Kentucky, while starting my family, was a challenge, of course, but it also really kind of opened up this whole other side of me that I think had always been there. I'm a natural leader. I've always loved administrating without really understanding what that meant. And there was actually a lot more about it than I knew, than I had given myself credit for at that point. Growing up on a farm with entrepreneurial parents who also had a roofing business to stay afloat farming, there was a lot of things that I knew. I didn't realize I actually knew more about marketing and programming, and I had gone to plenty of festivals as both a young artist and as a student, but also as a professional, and had always just kept a really keen eye out for those sorts of things. So it's been interesting to see things that I thought would be a challenge that maybe didn't, and other things that always take more time. Always overestimate how much time something is going to take you. Always overestimate how long something is going to take you, because I'm very idealistic about time. And actually, I think that's probably one of my challenges, which is probably leaning towards one of my greater flaws. I'm still learning how to delegate because this was my thing, you know, and now I can't believe it, but people are passionate about this and they want to be a part of this. And we have we have a tertiary level of junior faculty who are college-age professionals or young adults to kind of, as Angela was mentioning, to kind of help bridge that gap as I continue getting older each year, to be able to be a little bit more there for the students to talk about college and starting out and doing all these sorts of things. But there's a little bit of through line in faculty, but there's also, especially with the younger junior faculty, they're so great and they come out and they bring a lot of passion and energy that first year, but then they're off to bigger and better things, which is natural. So I'm the through line, and sometimes that makes it a little bit tricky for delegating. Angela mentioned grant writing, and I had no experience with that, but we were really fortunate. I found that you just never know until you ask. And I've learned to become a lot more humble about asking. And we had a gal for 1 year. She was able to work with us, and she had a law degree, and she had just gotten her master's in nonprofit management, and she acted as our grants writer with me, co-partnering for the year. And so now I'm back to being by myself again, but I learned so much with that. And I never underestimate the power of buying somebody a coffee or making cookies or doing something. There was a lot of that in singing, but also in running the nonprofit. And yeah, I think those would be the biggest things. Just about every year, there's like 2 spots where I think during this calendar year where I think, I just don't know. And then we hold auditions in March. And again, it's very different from a typical audition for a program like this. The students come in, we provide a professional pianist for them, we talk to them, we create this really positive environment so they can have a solid audition under their belt. And then we talk to them, you know, what are your goals, what are your interests? And they're just so craving these things where we are that it's every year I'm like, yeah, this is why I do this. This is amazing.
So I was just taking lots of notes here because both Kate and Angela and Dan all said things that continue to stick with me, but I was just going to say that both organizations, being small and volunteer-led organizations, really help us see the diversity in nonprofit management, nonprofit leadership, but also nonprofit engagement, and really how at all levels things can be done. So Bevan, I'm going to answer the question, but I want to say one quick thing first. So we talked, I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned really how you explore your passion. And if you are interested in starting a nonprofit organization, a lot of what I often will say to folks who come into United Way, especially young leaders, is, you know, we've all got these great ideas about the things that we want to do and where we want to help. And so there are opportunities for you to explore that, as Kate said, ask questions, get to know the leaders that are existing in the community within your space. But the thing is even though there's an organization that might do something that you do in concept, you are you. So the individuality that you're going to bring to that space is always going to be different. Now, you may partner with that organization and may not create something new, or you may partner with a large organization like a United Way or come on staff to help within that category of programming. But I just wanted to start by saying that there is always space for you, and there's always space for people to bring their full selves, their ideas, and all of their vision for these concepts. Just because the community need is not going away, and the need, no matter what our demographic is that we're serving, it's not going to go away either. So wanted to just start by saying that, because it really transfers into challenges and opportunities, as the rest of the panelists has said. So for me, you know, being a larger organization, as Angela mentioned, that has been around historically for a number of years, really it's all about reinventing ourselves, right? So we are constantly in the conversation because a number of organizations have had partnerships with us for centuries, or even just decades. And for them, it's a checked box that every year we're going to do this thing with United Way, and that makes sense. And my job, because I work with younger people, is I'm working with people who don't necessarily have as much familiarity. I will crack up, you all, every time I get a phone call when I was in the office, and I would pick up and someone would be like, "Is this United Airlines?" And I'm like, "No, no, this is not United Airlines." And then even just hearing my donors, I just had this conversation with my board the other day. There are people who still struggle with understanding what United Way does because we're not 100% focused on one particular thing. And so messaging and amplifying that messaging, clarity of your message, your mission, your vision, your stance has been really something that I personally have been working on within my space, but also our organization has at each of its levels, both the local level and the international and national levels. So I would say that that's sort of our greatest opportunity, is really rebranding. Secondly, around young professionals, we are a unique grouping because, as Dan mentioned, we want to be active and we want to be in it. And I think the great thing about young-led volunteer boards and advisory councils and volunteers, which I think Angela also alluded to, is there's so much energy and there's so much drive to do. But if you get a number of people who are strong leaders and self-starters in one group, there isn't always somebody who's going to keep everybody on task, right? And so that's the other thing that I work around, is having a large grouping of passionate people and helping some people understand that this time you're going to be on first and another time you might be on second or third, and that's okay, right? We're all learning different spaces and different skills and where we show up the best. And so I think that's another opportunity, is around engagement of volunteers, engagement of board members. One of the things that I am so grateful for that our United Way offers, and that a number of United Ways offers, are board service opportunities and board training experiences, where you get to sit and understand the mechanisms of fundraising, marketing, crisis management, all of that within the nonprofit sphere, so that you can be ready to serve on a nonprofit board. And so I have really urged a lot of my volunteers to go through that program. I've gone through it myself, just so that there is a greater breadth of understanding around where you can support, but also why that's needed. Because a lot of times we hear, "Oh, I need help." And our first inclination is, okay, I know what I want to do to support that, but what you want to do to support that organization may not be what that organization needs most immediately. And so being able to be a good listener and all of those other things are really important. So it's, for me, a lot of times juggling and supporting individuals in understanding where they can be of most help, which I think, as Angela put it, is an opportunity. It is sometimes a challenge because people will say, "I want to help out with our impact grouping and I want to plan the next volunteer opportunity." And y'all, I have like 45 people on my impact committee. And so that is not a need right now necessarily, but they can still volunteer, they can still redirect into other spaces. So the way that I sort of solve for that is making sure you have critical conversations and intimate conversations with your volunteers and your supporters around where they can be most helpful, and help them understand and see themselves within that fit and in that experience. And that is how you keep that sustainability. That is how you keep that lifelong supporter, is by allowing someone to be able to see themselves in the really the crust and the foundation of your organization, to be able to see themselves in the success every year of what comes about. So that's really where, I have my moments where, I want to let my hair down and scream sometimes, but it's also an opportunity for me to say, wow, I'm really grateful and blessed to have a network of people who I can call on. Tomorrow's just a new day for me to figure out how to, best attack that challenge. And then lastly, I just want to speak to the comment around really just resources and how you can continue to repurpose. Kate, I appreciated you saying not being afraid to ask others for help. Even being a big organization, United Way needs lots of help still. Grassroots organizations have taught me so much over the last couple of years about organic marketing, about crowdfunding, about, really leaving no stone unturned. And so I think we all have to appreciate the opportunity in learning from each other. We sort of stay in our lane and allow our barriers to get the best of us. We're missing all of the learning opportunities that exist from, people who are around us. And so I have often humbled myself and others to say, let's go to this other group that might be doing it well so that we can learn from each other. And, really when it comes to grant writing, when it comes to sponsorship outreach, corporate engagement, there are a number of different tools and resources that we can all benefit from to be able to offer that support as well.
Thank you, everybody. I'm curious what you would tell a student, a current Wesleyan student, who is interested in working in the nonprofit sector, perhaps as a founder, perhaps simply to make their career in the sector. What should they do now to gain more experience and knowledge to prepare them for that?
Guys, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren, please.
Okay. I'm passionate about this because this is really how I got into the sector. So I was an education major at Wesleyan. As I shared with everyone, I went into teaching immediately, but I had my minor and focus areas in psych, sociology, but also education, studies around racial justice, social justice, and equity. And one of the things that I did while at Wesleyan is I just went and volunteered in Bloomington. So I signed up to be a Girl Scout troop leader through Boys and Girls Club of McLean County. I went and volunteered with Planned Parenthood. I went and volunteered with the United Way in McLean County. And really the focus for me was just to better understand, again, what was around me. We, those of us who go to the school or went to the school, understand the Wesleyan bubble and how we can get so caught up in that. And there's so much more beyond not only Blue O, but also beyond Illinois and really this great nation and country. And so there's a lot that we can do, I think, to serve. Secondly, being in the sector, one of the things that I started doing was really allowing my internships in any of my areas to also feed into what those experiences could be. So being very attentive and asking to sit in spaces where there were dialogues being had about the gaps and the opportunities. So I remember very intentionally sitting in a meeting with Heartland Head Start, and they were talking about the issues that kids were facing around meals, and I didn't fully understand the food gaps at that point in time, but understanding that kids were not getting what they needed, and then going and being a Girl Scout troop leader through Boys and Girls Club, I started to realize, oh yeah, kids, again, like I said earlier, are not necessarily getting the food that they need at home. And so here's what we need to offer to students and to kids on a day-to-day basis. And then lastly, I would just say there's a great opportunity not only to do research, but also to join societies and organizations that support this sector. When I was in the nonprofit space, initially I was sort of on the volunteer side and volunteer management side, but also our direct service side of United Way. And then I transitioned into our development and fundraising space. And there's an organization called the Association for Fundraising Professionals that I decided to join. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I also joined the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network, and that's a national organization that young people can be engaged in, and they have both collegiate level engagement opportunities as well as young professional opportunities. And so growing and being a part of those societies and organizations not only provided me with spaces that I could meet and connect with other young professionals who are in this sector, but also really try out the things that I hadn't always been 100% comfortable in. Fundraising was really scary to me at first, but my CEO at the time was like, you're good at it. You like talking to people. They like you. They'll give you money. People give people. And I was like, what does that even mean? But when I first saw it happen, was able to get my first grant after writing a grant, just Googling and writing stuff and putting things together, I finally said, okay, like the confidence comes in doing, right? And so it was not only someone supporting me, but having that sort of social support and space to be able to offer that. So I give those three sort of experiences of go and volunteer, not just on campus, but also outside of, obviously do it safely, bring a friend if you need to, but then also making sure that you find ways to align what you're already doing, as Kate said, to, you know, that work that you're most passionate about, or use it to help you explore that. And then lastly, you know, look at the existing resources in societies and organizations that support the growth and development of nonprofit leaders.
This is something I'm really passionate about too. I remember, well, because when studying music at Illinois Wesleyan, and for nobody's fault other than my own, I was very stubborn about being a musician. I was able to go on a music scholarship. And so with my dual degree in English literature, I always kind of thought that was the path I was going to take. But I remember seeing these fantastic professionals come to our school and talk about, you know, like, it's all going to be fine. And they're like way beyond their established career. And I would think, but what can I be doing now? You know, and there's actually so much more power that you have as a college-aged student than we think we do. High school, college, people are so excited about young energy, and they so want to give opportunities, and they would much more easily give an opportunity to somebody in their early 20s than, you know, somebody even who's in their mid 30s like me, that's like, hey, I want to give this a try, without really knowing anything about you. And again, when you are single and unattached, and I don't mean without a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I mean there's nobody depending on you for income, you have the opportunity in your 20s to just go out and experience everything you can. And then you kind of start to get you have to get a little bit more particular and a little bit more guided with your decisions, because you have people depending on you and you really need to start making an income. But you have so much more power in that than you think you do. I'm an prime example of somebody that doesn't really have a lot of the formal training, but I've always been the type of person that talks to people, asks a lot of questions. I want to learn about everything. I don't discredit anyone that I come across. If I'm off singing with a new company, I'll talk to the marketing director. And this is even before I started Poco a Poco, just because I'm curious and I like getting to know people and know their stories. And that really kind of teaches you so much more than you could possibly imagine. But again, organizations are, especially nonprofits, are pretty open to letting people try new things, especially if you're young and especially if you're free. And starting off small and signing up for newsletters, staying informed by the places that really inspire you or that are really interesting to you. And I'm going to say something that probably sounds terrible, maybe a little crass, but I remember when I was about 26 and I had somebody talk to me as a musician about thinking of myself as a product, which is not something we want to think about at all when we are a singer, our instruments in our body, or we're running a nonprofit and we're doing this because it's something that we are, you know, wildly passionate about, and it's a really important thing that we're doing. But really thinking of yourself today as a product and thinking about what are your strengths and your weaknesses and what are the things that you can learn more about and how do you go about doing that. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the nonprofit sector in particular. There's so many things. Boards, you know, there's some boards that are more financial based, some boards that are more, you know, active based. That's the one that I have. We love having lawyer advice. We love having accountants. We love having somebody who's good at marketing. I mean, I can do social media, but I really don't enjoy it. So there's so many things that you can do, and you don't even necessarily have to be, passion is an important thing and responsibility is an important thing, but you don't necessarily have to be really good at what that organization is doing as their main focus. There's a lot of ways that you can add.
Yeah, and I'll add my perspective being, not necessarily being employed in the nonprofit world, but obviously a big, all of my professional career, working, for a nonprofit and that in a volunteer capacity. So for those that are maybe not necessarily looking to enter the nonprofit world from an employment perspective, but, very much engaged in wanting to be, volunteering for the majority of their careers. So I work full-time in the financial world. But, the Andrew Wisher Foundation has provided me the opportunity to, explore my passion and giving back and paying it forward. And really what I've enjoyed most, thinking more professionally and, selfishly, I would say, is that, the foundation and my work with the foundation has certainly kind of bolstered my skills outside of my profession, meaning not only as a founder and president of our organization, but even thinking about our ambassadors and our board members and people that really help us run this thing. You're wearing every hat, right? You have to show that you're financially proven and capable, right? You have to think from a marketing perspective that Lauren was touching on, from a sales perspective, right? You're wearing a sales hat when you're fundraising. When you're managing an event, you're obviously thinking logistically and working with people. You're developing your team and leadership capabilities and capacities. So, and thinking through the why of why would you give all this time and volunteering? Well, if you need more reason other than the cause itself, think about all the skills that you're developing going through the process of maybe starting or helping someone start it, or just joining as a volunteer. You're definitely benefiting your professional acumen as you help in a nonprofit organization advance their mission. So that's just from a volunteer standpoint. But thinking when I was in college and even before I started the Andrew Wisher Foundation, I was always one to want to get involved as well. And I would say it's find that passion, right? And Lauren was talking about trying as many things as possible, because you don't really know what your passion is until you see a bunch of other passions, right? When you see other people get involved in a cause, you automatically kind of feel that passion. And I would say that aside from, just picking what you love, explore other things, and you'll find a passion for any certain cause, right? I mean, in talking to Lauren and Kate here, I'm passionate about their causes already, right? So there's definitely a million things you can do in the nonprofit world, whether it be you're going to in hopes of being employed in the nonprofit world, or volunteering or starting your organization. It's an important decision that will benefit you, whether it's being employed or whether it's just trying to build your business or acumen or your own professional attributes going forward.
I'm sorry, could I say one more thing? It was so good.
We have to go because there's a Zoom backup. We have conflicts with people needing to start the next alumni session.
Oh no.
Which is like so sad because this was such a wonderful conversation. I just want to say quickly, thank you so much, panelists, for your time, truly, and sharing your valuable experience with alums and students. And those of you who are watching, I hope you're inspired to learn more about all three of these organizations and consider giving in whatever way you can. Just thank you so much, everybody. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. We're going to share the Zoom love and let the next thing get started. And as an alum myself, it was so wonderful to meet all three of you, all four of you. And I really, really appreciate your time tonight. And happy homecoming, and go Titans.
Yay, thank you.
Go Titans.
Probably
Thank
speak
you all.
to everybody that we are just people, and we're always happy to be reached out to. So don't be intimidated to look up what we do and reach out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Love you.
Thank you, guys.
Happy homecoming.